After 7 months of intense competition, the NBL title will be decided in today's grand final shootout between the league's newest club, the Southeast Melbourne Magic, and one of the oldest, the Melbourne Tigers. The Tigers drew first blood in a dramatic Game 1 just over a week ago when they crushed the more fancied Magic by 18 points. On Friday, the Magic hit back with a great victory to force this classic battle into this afternoon's clash for the championship.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is NBL Rewind, hashtag NBL Rewind, and I've got a big smile on my face. Liam Santa Maria, we are about to be joined by a legend, but also this Magic Tigers rivalry, you and I, Liam, are around the same age. If you're a 90s hooper, this thing was huge. His 92 grand final was the first of many. We're going to talk, and if you've just watched it, so much fun to relive the memories. If you haven't, get back into it right now. Liam, hello to you.
Hello, mate. Been looking forward to this one, obviously, to chat further with the great man, but also to go back and watch this game for the 17,000th time. I was in tears at the end of this one. I've got to be honest, as an 11-year-old Melbourne Tigers man in the arena, this was a tough loss to swallow, but an all-time great game.
It most certainly was, and we, of course, the winningest coach in NBL history and the coach of the Hawks. He's back. Everyone's excited about it. We speak of Brian Goorjian. Gorge, welcome to NBL Rewind.
No, man, as I said, I've been following you guys from China, from overseas, and happy to be on the podcast. I really enjoy watching them. So, and nothing better to talk about than that rivalry, but let's focus on 92. That was one of our highs.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm coming from someone who was sitting in nosebleeds at same age as Liam at 11 years of age at that time. It just gives me such great memories thinking back on being in the arena, 15,000, first year of the Tennis Centre and this whole big thing. I can't believe it's 28 years ago, Gorge. Are the memories and the goosebumps still ring true, even though it's nearly 3 decades ago, this famous Game 3 victory?
You know what? That era, that time, a lot of the guys that I coached and, you know, myself included, have been through a lot since, you know, like you said, all that time's passed. But we all say, whether it's you're talking to Sam McKinnon or Chris Anstey or Rob Rose in America or what, that group, that period of time, what was going on in basketball, that was probably the pinnacle for all of us. And the guys that were associated with the Magic, that 92 grand final, was when you asked that question, I can remember what I said at halftime, everything that led into that series. I mean, if you start the whole, when we assembled the Magic, and when you were in this city, you know, you got to remember you were competing against the icon of Australian basketball, the greatest player in my mind to ever play in the NBL. If you said who was the number one all time, it'd have to be Andrew Gage when you go over the scoring, the MVPs, what he meant to the league, the following. But at that time, in those early 90s, Lindsay, off the court and what he was doing for basketball and the fact and what he put into basketball. I mean, what we have today in Melbourne compared to the rest of the country as far as places to play, the state of basketball, you got to put a lot of that in Lindsay's box. So you're sitting there and you're going, man, we're playing against the Johnny Wooden of Australian basketball and the greatest player. You know, we got to have something here. That was our nut to compete, and our number one thing. You can't be any good unless you can beat the Tigers. So, I mean, just the semblance of whatever team it was, East Side Spectres, which led into the Magic, which was an accumulation of the St. Kilda Saints and the East Side Spectres, moving to the Titans, moving to the Drag. That was the beast across the way. And we men in black, young, athletic, Bruce Gray, and the physicality in the weight room and the defense. We went with, a kind of a Detroit Pistons theme, and they were, the high-flying, three-point shooting, up and down, the tradition of the Melbourne Tigers and styles were completely opposite. And that 1992, it all came together. Basketball, if you said, when was it at its peak? Well, we were both playing in the Glass House the year before, and it got moved. We both took on Rod Laver. We were dual tenants in the building. We end up playing each other in the grand final, and we end up playing a 3-game series that was knockdown, drag out, and David Stern ended up handing us the rings. And I remember, after the whole series was over, there was a lot of events that led to that series. I mean, just all the way through the year, sharing that venue, being around each other the whole time. We had an unbelievable regular season, 20-4, undefeated in regular season play, 16-0 when you take the finals into it in regular season at that venue, and but always knowing Melbourne's right there below you, and they were always the team. And I think all the other coaches felt that when you discussed it, of being able to go another level when they wanted. I always felt like we had it pegged on how to do the day-to-day grind, how to win games during the regular season and be the best you can be on the day, every game for a regular season. Melbourne always had that ability. They'll get to where they want to be on the ladder, and then when the finals come, if they want to switch, they can go into that act to a level or two. So that was always, when you're coaching, you're thinking, man, I want to stay away from that. And it ended up, the two of us in that final.
And then, of course, you got punched in the mouth in game one. As you said, you marched through the finals, hadn't lost a game, hadn't lost at that building, and then they come out and take game one. Take us to where you and the coaching staff and the team were after game one, because it's only a 3-game series. Mm-hmm. You're at an elimination point straight away after that loss.
And let's not forget, you lost your point guard too, Gorge.
Correct. I mean, in all this, it's a really defining moment. Is I played for the Tigers, and the last season was Andrew's first season as a player. So Andrew was just a kid, and when I came, Lindsay brought me to Australia, and I stayed in where Pete's bar ended up being. I slept there. And Andrew used to shoot with Andrew when he was 12 years old on the basketball courts, in the back courts of Albert Park. And I grew up with Lindsay, and Lindsay was my coach and my mentor all the way through. And then we end up, we don't have to keep going on about it, but it ended up being a pretty bitter rivalry and pretty much different styles. There was always, after the games, there was fights in games, there was complaints, our style, their style, are you allowed to guard Andrew like this? We're grabbing and holding every possession and punching. So there was a lot of anxiety. And I love the man and I respected the man. He was public enemy number one in the competition. So I'll never forget when we walked into that stadium. And, the guys, you sit in that locker room down in the dungeon and you come up, and that place was to the ceiling. You couldn't move. And I'm standing there and I'm just taking that all in. And whenever you get to a final, you say to yourself, man, make sure you enjoy this and don't take this for granted. This is, say this to the team, this is something special. This is what we play for. And to step in there, it just sent goosebumps down my spine. And I'm looking down kind of out of the corner of my eye. You don't want to stare, but you're watching them warm up. You're always trying to get a beat. What are they like? Are they nervous? Are they excited? Are they pumped? And I'm looking over there, and they're all dunking, and they're moving. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see Lindsay walking towards my bench. And I'm going, man, this, what, that wasn't I never did that with him. Had a man's shake after the game was over and a respect, but that was it from both of us. And he walked over and he tapped me, and I turned and looked at him, and I don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. And he goes, Brian, he goes, I never thought this would happen in your lifetime, let alone mine. Look at this. And he was so, I mean, here's a guy, I mean, I kind of, you know, you almost feel like crying. Here's a guy that's put his whole life and the Melbourne Tigers and what he's done for basketball. And I did, I kind of took it in. I go, man, this is special. And as we get into the question that was asked, I mean, there's a lot of background. First time co-tenants were playing each other in there. So it's not, any of the three games were not really a home game.
Right.
You know, you got half them screaming, you know, and then we've got our group screaming, and people are drinking beers, and it's like, it's on in there right from the gate. And I'll never forget the first quarter, you know, it was very apparent. They were just dominant. You know, they were thrown over the top. They were back cutting us. Copeland was hot. Bradkey was a man around the basket. They had Rob pretty locked up. You know, they had Simmons on him, and he was bumping him around and making, you know, they were making life tough for us to score. And we had, it was like men against boys, honestly. We came in at halftime, and we were, I can't even remember the score, but we were down and not looking like a comeback. And during, as was just mentioned, during that, you know, Darren Perry went down hard, and we could tell when we came in halftime, he's sitting on the, you know, the table, and he's got tears running down his eyes, and Steve Evans looks at me and he does the, it's done, coach. So we had no answer for him the second half. And I remember looking, I stayed after they'd won, and they were jumping up and pointing to their, and they were in a circle, and Copeland was on gaze, and they're doing the finger deal and all that. And I grabbed Rob, and I go, they think this shit's over, man. You know, and I looked at him, and Rob was an unbelievable competitor. And I don't think for a minute they thought that, but I'm coaching. I'm trying. I'm right. As soon as that thing ended up, I got to come with something for this next game. So we go down those stairs, and Rob was in front of me, and I mean, everything spun around Rob. Rob's, you know, he walked in there, he put his forearm through that whiteboard, just put his forearm, and that thing folded like a napkin, and both sides dropped down. And then when he was done, I go, you know, hold on, listen to me here before you take off your shoes. And I'm looking at Rob, he's untying his shoes anyway. And I think to myself, this isn't time to say a word. You know, I just looked at everybody and I said, hey, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. And Rob hurled both his shoes into the shower. I could hear swearing, and I look over at DP, and I'm like, I walk up the stairs and I go to the assistants, man, we got to come up with something, you know, something for game 2. So long story short, we got on that phone to the States all night. I called every human being I knew, and, you know, we're down 1-0. We were on top of this thing. We had, you know, it gave them the background, and I got all this motivational stuff. And then I called a guy that was with, I'll never forget, he was with Miami, and he was, you know, under Riley. And he said, you know, coach, they interviewed the top 10 tennis players in the world. And they asked them what they do when it's point match. This is it. You know, you got 1 point, match is over. You got 1 point. And what do you think they said? You know, you sit back and you say, well, I take 1 point and win that one. And, you know, so the whole mindset would be take a point at a time, take a point at a time. That leads a game. So basically he's saying live in the moment, do the, you know. And he said, yeah, he goes, 9 of them were on that theme. He goes, I'll never forget. He goes, Borg said, you know, he goes, I get on the baseline. This is it. He goes, I get on the baseline. I step back. And he goes, I look at the crowd and I say to myself, now I have a chance to show everybody how great I am. So then he goes, and I thought, man, I know Rob Rose. I go, that's a beauty. And then he said, real quick, he said, show 10 minutes of violence. Football, Dick Butkus hits, footy guys getting smashed, car races. So I, long story short, all the coaches, we got our stuff together. We went in there, and I said that to Rob, and I just I knew this was in the morning. I knew it clicked. And I go, man, just what I said to you guys, and then I put on just smashes and hits and violence, And we had, I'll give you the inside. We had the other thing that was discussed, and I know you guys do a lot on the basketball now on the technical side, on ball screens now, spacing, all that stuff. Well, one of the things said to me was, Melbourne runs long cuts in their offense. They go gaze, he cuts off the high post, and then he comes back and he cuts off the double. He goes, I pop him wherever he went. He goes, he doesn't have a free riding to just run through he goes, now you can't step and hit a guy, but you can get, when the ball's passed, you can stand in front of him, and now what's he going to do? He's got a bump, and then when he cuts off the high post, there's George. When he cuts off that low guy on the curl, there's Rose. It's a free crack. And he goes, by the fourth quarter, he won't be able to lift his hands up. So the big one for us, we came in game 2, and Bolin hit a jump shot to start that game. And when he came back on defense, he came down, and he gave everybody, including me, along the bench a high five. And I turned and I looked and I go, man, our whole bench, no one's thinking about when do I get in, my turn. Our bench, everyone's just fist punching, everyone's in. So that led to, we just smashed them game 2. And last one on game 2, which sets us up to the game 3, was Darren Perry was the personality. Him and Parkey were just huge to our culture, to who we were, to the day-to-day. And they were, Darren had an unbelievable year. But in all honesty, his matchup in that final series, you could see it before he got hurt. I mean, who do you put him on? Like it was, you put him on Gage, you put him on Copeland, and the Copeland matchup was a bad one. And which led to, now Darren's not there, he's on the side, and he was unbelievable in that role with the team, with his crutches up, and it was like a motivational piece sitting there. And then basketball-wise, our matchups were much better with Rose on Copeland and Ninnis on Gaze. And the size-wise, they couldn't play over the top. They couldn't do that. And then obviously Darren Lucas was the key, but you had Ninnis rotating in that 3. So our size was there. That second game, and it led from that game all the way through. They're over the top, they're fast break, they're easy baskets. That got thrown out the window. And game 2, we're feeling, we walk in that locker room and everyone's saying, to ourselves, the longer the clock's our friend. And when you play the Tigers, the longer this series goes, as it was in 96, the 2 we won, the best thing for us, time's our friend. So now we've taken this to 3, and they're going to be licking their wounds. And we got to them a little bit. Our day-to-day strong, our conditioning strong, our D strong. We're just going to build on this and just, same game plan and grind them to salt. That was our mindset going into game 3.
And it led to, even watching the game back, like the intensity's through the roof. The scoring's a little lower. Those last 3 or 4 minutes, it's one of the most remarkably tense game. And I touched on it earlier, being 28 years later. You still feel it when you watch it now. For people who would have just watched it right around Australia, the intensity and the drama still cuts to this day, I think, Gorge. Talk to us about what you remember, your emotions during the game of this incredibly tight deciding championship.
Well, I always, I mean, there's I remember going to Collingwood or somewhere in the early days. One of the things I did, you know, I was taught in my coaching, find something that Australia is good at and you know, and learn. You know, you got to grow, you got to get better. So I incorporated Australian rules football, and I knew Terry Wallace, I knew Robert Walls, I knew David Parkin. All those guys were wonderful to me. And I went into the locker room, and it was one of them was along the lines, the big logos on the thing, you know, about refusing to lose, and you're more, the more you put into something, the more the less you're willing to surrender. And this team, this organ, that group, I mean, I worked them, honest to God, I don't, you know, I was young then, and I look back and go, I would have been, you know, this stuff with loading and all of this, what I did, and when I say me, it was Ian Stacker, it was our coaching staff was like hardcore with the work. And there was something in there. We've put in so much, and we want this thing so bad. And I felt like going into that third game, I didn't have, after we lost game one, and we were, you know, but when it got it to game three, I had a good feeling about game three. And the story on game three for me was the relationship with Rob Rose. And I mean, as we're talking now, you know, and when Rob Rose, we were 10-1, and Mill Newton was our import. And he was struggling. He was struggling, and he ended up having a knee issue, and he went. And then I'll note we signed Rob Rose, and back then, you know, I had a guy that kind of was doing all the work on back then it was the D League, you know, was doing all the work on that. Put this name to me. We have to move quickly. Let's bring him out. And we're in court 9 and at Albert Park, and he comes in, and we do some 5-man weave and some 3-on-2 and some 4-on-3. And I would get some water, and I remember Ian Stacker walking up to me and goes, "My God, this guy can really play." And it's funny because I'm thinking to myself, who, you know, when you know, like sometimes they say, oh, it's going to take the import a little while. He'll get comfortable. The Leroy Loggins, the James Crawfords, the Rob Roses, they walk in the gym, and it's instant. It was like, man, oh man, we got a dynamo. And we practiced for 3 days, and it was like, this thing is everything. And the story was, we go to Newcastle and Illawarra, and we play a double, and he gets 40 in both games. And after the second game, I go up to his room and basically knock on the door. And he's New York, Rochester, New York. Basically, you know, I'm a hired gun. I'm here, pay me. When the season's over, I'm back home. And I'm saying to him, I go, Rob, you can't play like this for us and make this. And he goes, what are you talking about, man? I just got 40 in 2 games. We won both. I go, my Australian kids aren't touching the ball. This they ain't happening, you know? And so I get into that with him for about 45 minutes, and he looks at me like I'm nuts, out of my mind. And I said, Rob, you're going to lead the league in every stat. You're going to be the best player in the league. Just trust me. And I said, I'll tell you this. I said, Rob, if the game is 5 minutes to go in the game and the game's on the line, I'm going to you. Ball's in your hand, your game. So let's transfer to game 3, that last timeout that we get when it's like level. That was Rob. Rob called the timeout underneath the basket, pointed to his shirt, timeout. And I'm looking at him. I don't really have a lot to say. You know, we've got what we're running and whatever. And he looked at me and he slapped his finger on his wrist and goes, 5-minute mark, game on the line. And I step back and I go, this is just him and me. Those are the only two. I'm thinking, whoa. You know, so the shot he hits on the baseline, and I think he has a foot out of balance on that. if you watch it again, he does that thing on the baseline. He raises up and he shoots it. Those 2 sets were right from that thing playing off Rob. And we didn't do that. I mean, we went 20-4 all year. We didn't have many close games. That was the first time and only time from the very first time you rode, we went there. And then when the game, there's a minute, 45 seconds left, we finally had it won. And our crowd is behind me, you know, and they're Magic, everyone's up. And you're just loving that moment. And George is at the free throw line shooting free throws. And Rob walks over from half court and he puts his arm around me and he taps me and he goes, "Hey, great coaching, coach." And walks back. But and then the icing on the cake, obviously, was just where basketball was when we left that venue that night, and to have the affiliation with Stern in the ring, and, you know, giving Bruce his MVP. And I mean, you look at it now because of what Stern became and what the NBA's come, to have the commissioner of the NBA here handing out the rings to our, you know, was, I always say that. I go, man, I got this ring. Stern handed it to me, shook my hand. I go, that was special.
Gorge, about 20 seconds after the siren, the celebrations are happening. You get a microphone stuck under your nose, and the first thing you talk about is the Tigers and the quality of the opposition. We sit down and talk about this 28 years later, and the first thing you talk about is the rivalry, the Tigers, and the quality of the opposition and how that makes it. I think the fact that you played for them, you came over and played for them for 4 or 5 years, was kind of underknown at the time, your history with them. You were sort of seen as like the anti-Tigers, right? You talk about the black and the styles and everything. So much of that rivalry was about the genuine feeling that existed between and against the teams. What were the emotions for you about the Tigers, about Lindsay and that family club? Like, did you hate them? Was it a respectful rivalry? Like, what were the emotions for you on nights like that?
I gotta say, I mean, it was really difficult. And I talked to Lindsay years later that I honestly went into a box where I don't know if you do when you fight, because I've never been a boxer or whatever, but in competition now, everybody's, you know, after the game, I went into a box with them at the time where I can't feel like I feel. I can't be. They're great. I love Lindsay Andrews, like, you know, a good friend. I couldn't go there and compete how I wanted to compete. I just didn't have that in me, and I wanted to beat him with everything I had, and through that competition, so many things happened that we did that annoyed the hell out of them, and what they did annoyed the hell out of us. You know, Lindsay's too powerful. He controls it. He controls that. You know, you just start. And also, you got one of my closest friends on the planet, and we played together, is Al Westover. We virtually came out here together. So it was and we never, the relationship, we didn't speak except we'd enjoy each other on Christmas. But it was war. And underneath it, I only know when I stepped away from it, and I'll get into this a little more. When I stepped away from it, the first thing I thought of when I stopped playing, when I stopped coaching in this, I want to open that door with Lindsay again, and because I admire him, I respect him. He was wonderful to me, but and I explained this to Lindsay, and it was funny. He didn't get it at all. He just said, "Brian, you really didn't have to do that." But my personality, I got with them, and I think that rivalry and where I went with them really made me a better coach. And I look at that rivalry with Melbourne, and what I knew I had to do as a coach to win drove me and made me a better basketball coach. And I think really, honestly, the two of us, the Magic and the Tigers, kind of kept each other's organization from being the Bulls. I think if we hadn't been here, the Tigers would have got those. They would have won 5-6. You know, anytime we were stringing something together, you get 13 wins in a row, Tigers beat you. You win a championship, you know, the next practice game for the following season, we get in a full-on fist fight in Knox with the benches cleared, and they end up kicking our ass in the semifinals, so we can't repeat. You know, so we were always throwing punches at each other. And I just want to stress that there was no love there. There was no love there. But underneath it, deep, when the thing finished, love that family and love what the guy did for basketball, and like a second father. And it's funny, I kind of said I'd never get into the NBL again because of those. I knew where I had to go. And when I was out of the NBL, it's like you're everybody's buddy. You know, you see Joey, oh, great to see you, coach. It's fantastic. You know, you're invited to practices. Everybody, and you come home and you go, man, I'm having a great time. But once you get in it, then you got to put on a different, it goes to a different place. And that one went as deep as anything I've ever felt.
Did you find it hard? Sorry, Liam, did you find it hard when early on in your career to be able to be that type of person? You mentioned how it made you a better coach, but or was it just the competitive juices that sort of took over? Because did you find it hard to have to not be mates or have that love with people that you'd played with or coached under or had been obviously a mentor for yours?
Really difficult. Really difficult. I mean, and you know what? So many things when you're the head coach. In my personality, if Lindsay asked you the 9 years I was with the Tigers, I remember he said, I missed you, you know, the next year you were missed because I was the fun guy. You know, I was always cracking joke. You asked about Brian Goorjian, the basketball player, the guy as part of your team. I was kind of the prankster. I always had a one-liner. I was always joking. I was always high-fiving, yapping, the fun at the party. And when you're the coach, I could, you know, cutting guys. So it started that, you know, you have an import come and they used to spend 3 months at my house before we decided to, you know, now you got to go to Mill Newton's flat and knock on the door, and you love the guy. He's part of your team, and you got to cut it. And so there became, to be a good coach, you've got to have that in your, and that was something that wasn't natural for me. I had to develop that. I had to get in a mindset, and I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like that where I went there, and I hated cutting players. I hated you know, developing relationships, and then you know, Tony Ronaldson, you know, many situations occurred during that was, you know, I'd come home at night and really struggle to sleep. The basketball's the fun part, the game's the fun part, but that other stuff, mindset, putting a team together, getting the values and the culture, and then being the guy who's responsible for enforcing it is lonely.
You talked about that competitiveness and that place that you went to as a coach during that time, and then what the past 10 years have been like for you in Australia. Coming back each off season, and it's been like a sanctuary of kind of friendship and relationships. Are you ready to go back there into that space again, with guys like Dean Vickerman and Andre Lamanis and the other coaches around the league? Or have you got to a point now, we all change as we get older, where you're like, I don't have to be like I was. I can approach it in a different way. Where's your head at in advance of this season?
Well, Yeah, you change a bit with age. You know, I have a responsibility now, and I've thought a lot about, you know, how I handle myself on the sideline. You know, how I handle myself with the referees. That I'm coming back and I'm a positive influence in the game. And but as far as the other coaches, I'm a respect there. I do have like Trevor Gleason, you know, got Andre Lamanis. I've coached before. I think I've simmered a bit there. In same thing in a lot of areas. You know, I've evolved, but I knew at that period of time that's where I needed to go. And you know, I'm as excited and motivated, and will do whatever I can for us to win a championship. But I think I can do it without going that deep as far as competition goes.
What about behind closed doors? You talk about how hard you worked that team in 1992. Heck, I played under you for a period of time, and I've never worked as hard as I did under your mentorship. Is the approach on the practice court the same? Is it going to be the same with this Hawks group as what I experienced and what these guys in the Magic experienced, or is it different now after your experience of the last 10 years?
It's going to be different. It's going to be different. There's more technology. There's more technology, and to be truthful with you, maybe some of those years I was at fault that we were on a downhill cycle getting to the playoffs. I mean, I lost 5 grand finals in a row before I won the 3 at the Kings. And, you know, the Kings guys would say I trained them harder than they've been, but it was a step off what I was doing with the Magic. And now you've got Catapult, you've got all these, you know, you've got people that are going to be there as far as the workload goes. But I'm going to be the group that I've got, and what I've tried to do in the recruiting of the Hawks is get guys that want to get better. I just realized, you know, that, you know, when you look at the free agents list and you look at the people we've signed at the Hawks, I haven't signed one player that's a retread from another team. That's, when I say a guy that played for somebody and he's available because he's no longer fits. I went like I did when I went with the Magic with Sam McKinnon, you know, Frank Grimmick, you know, Jason Smith, Chris Anstey. And a common theme with the group that I've got is they all want to get better, and they all want, you know, they want to play in the EuroLeague, they want to play in the NBA. And I know as a coach, and it was the same with Lindsay, a lot of the guys I had wouldn't have done well with Lindsay. A lot of the guys Lindsay had wouldn't have done well with me. I'm not for everybody, but I know what my strengths and what my attraction is. And it's interesting, even 11 years later, the guys that we got that were attracted to me are calling out for what you got when you were with the Magic. You know, Coach, I'm coming to you because I've heard you're good at development. I want to get better. What's the strength program like? Do we get to shoot after practice? So I see a hunger there. But answer to your question, the training work will be more individualized and more technology. You know, okay, well, we gotta rest them today. Stay off their feet. Okay, keep this in the half court. No, I would ignore that and just keep going years ago. So, but there is going to be that theme to it.
You mentioned those 5 grand final losses before the Sydney treble. Is there a particular team, game, season, moment that you played over and over in your head for a little while after, or maybe even to this day where you look back and think, had it have gone this way rather than that way, it would have been a much different result?
You know, it's an interesting, the second aspect was always, we could do another story on Adelaide, you know, what went on in Adelaide and with the Magic, because Phil Smythe was like a prodigy of Lindsay. You know, Lindsay was so intelligent offensively, and they were like clockwork. So he would sit with his legs crossed like he was at the dining table, and Phil Smythe was the same. And then I'm marching up and down the sidelines, you know, yelling every movement and flipping my hands up when I got the coat going, and I'm dressed in black. So when we went to Adelaide, I was like public enemy number one. And we ended up, the start of that slide was we finished on top 2 years in a row. And we finished on top. We winter season, play in the final against Adelaide, get beat, start the season right away, play a summer season and move the thing to summer, finish on top, play Adelaide again, and lose. And what I guess the turning point for me in all of this was, you look at the game being played now, I was playing smash mouth basketball. I was, you know, Wheeler, Pepper, Ronaldson. You know, we were first in on Bogut, trying to get Andrew Bogut when he was like 10 years old. Anything that was, you know, big and talented, we had. And they were Catalini, Marr, really like the games being played now, court spread open, and we're trying to smash that ball inside. And the process to score for us was just so much more difficult when you got to the finals. Now, regular season, people say, well, you blow it. No, it's a different game in the finals. And what we were great at was how we handled in between the games, how we played on game night, week after week after week. But when we got to the final and we get there, our style of play was a disadvantage. So the turning point for me was when I went, after the 5 losses, I went to the Kings, and I had a bunch of guys that I didn't recruit that were there that could all play off the bounce. So you had Shane Heal, you had Chris Williams, so now you're running your stuff in the playoffs and you don't have a basket. Man, they're on top of the play. They've scouted it 1,000 times. Well, Jason Smith needed help. You hit him and he's going to make that shot. He's not a guy you give the ball to and say, okay, it's 8 on the clock, make a play. And my whole team was built that way, where I got to those playoffs and I had Shane, I had Chris Williams, I had Kavasi in that first deal. And I go, man, this is what was missing. You know, you got to have 2 or 3 of those guys in your repertoire, like Catalini and Marr, and really that can do it off the bounce. And so that first Kings team led to the next year having, you know, Ebby, and then I got CJ Bruton. I always had 2 or 3 in that group that could do that. And that's the same thing when I went to Asia. And I got there and our team broke out of the blocks 10-0. I brought Jemmer Fredette there, you know, a guy that could break people down and shoot anywhere over the half-court line. And I started a trend there by what I'd learned here that was definitely applicable when I got to China.
Cam, it's not the answer I was expecting. I really thought he was going to say in 2002, I wish I had a rolled St. Marie out there a little bit on Willie Farley and just turned that series around.
I looked down and said, hey, Lim, you're in. And then just turned the whole thing on the Titans' way.
Now, Lim had that. The problem for me is that was our whole team. We had every team I had so many guys that could, you know, Mark, so many guys that could play that role.
Yeah.
And what I learned in Sydney, like we had, but we didn't have that guy, you know, so, you know, always recruiting in and because Lindsay never liked, for example, Lindsay never had a small guard where I starting way back with Wayne Larkins, Darren Perry, I always had a little pit bull that could pick that ball up full court and turn. But it ended up, I accumulated more and more and more, and we became tough defensively. But like I said, when it came to push and shove, on the perimeter, scoring was difficult for us in big games.
And you talk about those learnings in Sydney, and then and the guys you then brought in, and what you did in China. You can see that now with the team you're putting together at the Hawks. You know, you can see that same mindset with Tyler Harvey and Deng Adele and these types of guys. You spoke the other day about how none of the guys you've signed, or at least announced to this point, are known defensively. But I guess you have the confidence that you can say, all right, I need guys that can play, we can space the floor, can get to the rim, can shoot, can score. I can teach them and develop them at the other end of the floor. Is that the mindset you're taking into this challenge?
Well, I think, I don't know that anybody even realized this. I mean, you know, coming back, I had a whole different feel for what this was going to be. And I was, you know, like what I was walking into. I watched those Hawks games, and I knew what management was going to be. And I said, I've got 5 guys here that are young and really talented. And we don't need to go through it again, but what happened 2 weeks into it, you know, I've got the job, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, we don't have anybody. And these guys, this team has been, they're in receivership. They have no affiliate. They're all free, and they've been free for months. So none of those are yours, Brian. And I'm looking at the free agents list, and I'm going, obviously we're in a COVID, and if I'm a player, I want security. So guys that can play, that were good with their teams, are back. So I'm looking at the free agents thing, and I'm going, okay, well, now you talk about first challenge. And I think and I'm being honest, what's been remarkable is what we've done. I mean, I was walking the hall. You say start about competition. I'm going, this is going to be embarrassing. I'm going to walk into first game with the Hawks, and we're going to play. And you look at this league as compared to me being in China, there's not one, oh, we've got that one. Even when I was in it before, okay, we've got Canberra, we've got Newcastle's down, or Hobart's, you know, United, Sydney, New Zealand, Brisbane. There's only 9. There's all these kids, and you're looking and you're going, what am I going to bring to the table for this night after night? So I'm just going to walk in and just get pantsed every night. Where are we going with this? And I got to say that a huge start for me was the Sudanese community. And just having that did not exist 11 years ago. And I did some workouts, and I go, hey, man, this kid's respectful, hardworking, and talented as hell. And then we got the Adele Dang, and now bang, the things started to roll. And as I said to you guys, it was more Max Dahling. He was attracted. A lot of people had wanted that piece, and I didn't know Max. He was attracted to us because what he wants, he sees in. That's what the reputation is. So we ended up getting, you know, guys that are young, guys that have some talent, and guys that want to get better. And as you said, Lim, the game now, a lot of those guys. I'm looking at it with our group. I would spend 45 minutes every day in the defensive box. I'm going to say that to them because I think naturally it's not that. But I do think we've got some pieces that can put numbers on the board. And as this thing pans out, the choices I had were the imports and the youth, you know, the future star player. And we've made, okay, we've got control of that, and I've gone down the path of we need 2 of them to be able to stroke that ball and be able to make plays for us. And the third one needs to be a defensive, you know, a Joe Dumars, a guy that, you know, okay, you can't just lag off, but a guy that can defend, is tough, doesn't need the ball in his hand. So 2 of the 3, like you said, and then I've been just so pleased and fortunate to get a Cam Barstow, Adele Dang. These are guys wanted, and we have no track record yet as the Hawks. And I think the next couple signings are going to be, you're going to be excited about too. So when I look at my group, I go, it's a long way. And I thought, man, we're not going to have what they had last year. And now we lost Sunday, who I just thought the world of. And anyway, that kid left an impression on me, man. That he's going to be a special player and unbelievable human being. And that was a hard one to lose, but he's gone to a good situation for him, and he's an unbelievably great kid. And Angus was all class as well. I get it. They've had 2 tough years. It's been a struggle down there, and so these guys, it's a new day. They're excited to be there. Got a long road to hoe, but at least I got something to work with.
Just on that, I don't expect you to give names away, but when should the Hawks fans expect to see a couple more names be announced and wheeled out?
This week we're finishing. We've got that future star, and that's we're right there with that. We've got second import. That's I think both of those this week, and then the last Australian player. So we've got 3 spots, and they're 3 key names. To me, we're right on the fence of being competitive or not. And these 3 names can make us, so we're in that box.
So as I punch those numbers, does that mean that Greeter will sit outside that 10 roster for a period of time as he continues to rehab?
Definitely. I mean, we've, and again, I've my conversation with him, that's any way you look at it, the knee, when you have the complete knee reconstruction, unless like in the football, sometimes the graft they'll do with a different deal that you can be back in 9 months, but it also has the ability to rip again, more probability. Where with a young kid like that, and I had my fingers crossed that they didn't do that, and they didn't.
Right.
And you're looking at, so if the season was to start in December, you're looking at, him moving around in January and be ready in March. That pretty much takes him out of this year. So, this year would be getting, and he's an exciting piece to me, real exciting.
Yeah.
So, I can't say playoffs if we make the playoffs,
right.
But you got to visualize this as the first game's big for us every game, and he's not going to be a part of that.
Yeah, and he's so young, man. Like, what's the rush, right? We see that with
Correct.
Angus Glover right now. Like, he took his time and did it right, and he's getting back to where we always thought he would be.
Correct.
I just want to also add, like, you talked about the challenge. Like, we don't have anything yet. This is a brand new team, brand new coaching staff, players that haven't – but you've done this before, right? Like, you go to Sydney – well, the Magic gets put together. Obviously, you had a bunch of those guys with the Spectres previously, but it was a new deal. It was Parky coming into the mix, and you brought it all together, won the title in year 1. You go to Sydney. You're new to that whole setup. You're successful right away. You come and take over the Dragons. For most people, you look at that situation and go, it's going to take some time to bring all of that together and get that happening. Expansion teams or teams with a new coach, no continuity. What do you know that others don't about getting that to come together so quickly?
This was 11 years ago. I really felt like, and it was funny, comparing it to international coaching. It was kind of, and I'm just, again, being honest, I'm at an age where, there's nothing to hide. You come into the NBL, and by the time I was winding up, I know how to win in this. I know how to put a team together in this. I know how to compete on the day-to-day in this. I know how to win in this. Maybe not the championship, but I got this down. I know how to do this. When I went to China, it was a totally different beast. When I went to the national team, totally, being an international coach, totally different than being a club coach. And I thought, the first Olympics as opposed to the second Olympics, I kept saying to, hey man, you do these things in Fort, like Lemanis. He's a damn good international coach. He did a hell of a job. And you look at that and you go, man, look at the progression in him in this arena, because it's different than coaching a club team. Mm-hmm. And when I left international coaching, I thought I was getting better at it. I'd gotten better at it from when I started, and I would have loved, more, because you become a better coach. And so now with the NBL, it's that process I felt really good about, and I knew how to do it. And a lot of times, the Kings, like you said, if you name all those examples, I was in it. I've never done this before. I've never come in, let's take the Magic, the one we're doing the story on. The year before, we were the Spectres. Right. We played Perth in the final. Mm. I brought that team back, and I added Parkinson, Dorge, and Lamanis. And, when I went up to the office, there was more. There was an extra one here, more, so we were more powerful. We had Clinton Grievous, we had Andrew Johnson, we had, with this thing, we had more. But I knew the owner, I knew this owner, I knew that 9 guys. And it's the same thing when we went to the Kings. The Kings, Brett Brown had, Kavasi Franklin, had Chris Williams, had Shane Hill, had, they were all there. So I brought Brad Sheridan. I go, this team needs a defender and a guy that doesn't have, no ego. I had brought one player with me. When I went to the Dragons, Ruffy Jaminda, Mark Cowan, first class. This thing's all first class. I got Joe Ingles. I got, Mark Worthington. I've got, I had a group of, 7 or 8 guys that were already there. Mm-hmm. And then I added 4 nice pieces. This, new management, new ownership, completely new team that doesn't know each other. Mm. So you walk down there, coach, where's the stadium? Coach, where do we lift? Oh, I don't know. I've never been there either. It's like, do you know no relationships with any person? Where do they eat? Where do they, no idea. So this one involves all aspects of the organization. And to my liking, like I would like, in the team that we put together, I've never had, through this process with management, I've never had a Brian Colangelo before. I've never had, and I as a lead, this resource is really special. It's like, this was NBA Executive of the Year, how he handles, a recruit, who you recruit, the intel that you get on players is just, it's made my job in that area so much easier. It's just been a piece that's, really been huge.
Hashtag NBL Rewind to get involved. Anything else on current day, Liam, before I just go back with a couple of questions for Gorge?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. 1996, of course, another 3-game series, although game 3 was a little more comfortable, I'd say definitely in the second half at least, Gorge. But we had Copes on about a month ago, and that game 2, they won game 1 again. Game 2, he has a shot, essentially, that would have put them in front with, I'm remembering around 10 seconds ago. It goes in and out. Copes thought it was down. Do you remember the moment when Copes got that look that would have put him up with 10 seconds left?
I do. And I remember the play they ran was, again, Lindsay, and it was brilliant. And he had that wide open look. And I also remember Copeland later, us being 9-up with about a minute and a half to go, and that epic game that changed our whole year. Mm-hmm. And really changed the Magic completely. Him hitting that just over half court in front of my bench. The ball was in the air and everybody's up. And I watched that thing in slow motion, and that thing broke our heart. But he had the look, And that series, again, was just, can we get this thing to the third? And because I thought there were certain times where they were happening and they were great. And we kind of, not like the Magic in '92, we were dominant from day one. We wiped the thing. And 20-4, undefeated at home. And for the whole, always worried Tigers could lift. This year, I thought we were that the Tigers had us. They were the one, and we had to do something to win that. And the second game we played to stay in it. And then the third game, again, as I said, we get this thing to 3. I could tell the memory of that. We're sharing, and we're in that locker room, and we had Bill Nelson and Daniel Kowalski in charge of recovery, and we had the ice bins going and the massage tables up, and we had Karen Inge, was Big M, and she had the TV show on eating and diet, and we had her and her girls cooking our meals in there, and everyone's getting massaged, and we had the film up for already some of the stuff cut up from the game we played just then, and we sat in there, and when we walked out of that room, it was like everybody knew, and again, this is within your team, and it's the mindset you want to coach. There's no way we're losing game 3. You could see, Giddy and Bradkey walking out. They were in the home side walking out. They got their, 3 beers dangling from the lot after they finished walking to their car, knowing that they just won game 2, and they didn't. They had it. It was theirs. Now we got to come back and play these guys in game 3. And I just thought, man, oh man, this is, it's all come. And it was that second half, that game was just, we just put it together and had that thing from the second half on. Obviously, we're talking about the ones we won.
Yes.
Because they had, believe me, they had their, you put Lindsay and Andrew here and interview, we haven't talked about, there was so many years where they changed, our whole roster for the next year. We'd finish the season and go, man, I got to let this guy go. I got to let this guy go. And I told you there's nothing I hated more than that. But it's like we can't play with these guys anymore. We've got to do this. There was a constant, whenever we did this, they'd come back and punch us right in the mouth the next year.
We've had Drury on the show. He was joined us a couple of months ago now. It was a great chat, as you can imagine. If prime Andrew Gaze one game, so you have Aaron Lucas, Mike Kelly, or Jason Smith, who are you starting on Andrew Gaze in their prime?
No. All 3 of them unbelievable, but I've never seen anything like Aaron Lucas. And when they talk about the greatest defender of all, I felt like I had an aspect to Jason Smith, to Mike Kelly that, I taught, coaching staff that taught, here's your stance, here's where the ball is, here's where you need to be when you're guarding him, this is his jab foot, there was a science to it. Lucas had no interest in the science. Lucas had no interest, and if you asked him what Michael Jordan's number was, he didn't know. He never watched a game of basketball. But when he guarded, it was like he did things that you just never seen before. And I remember one particular one where Andrew Gaze was in they run the bring it up, Copeland brings it up, throws it to Andrew, runs the cut off the high post. Now they're going to come and set their first option side pick and roll. And Andrew's got it, and he's facing the basket. And Lucas has got one leg wrapped around each of his legs, and his chest and his face is right on Andrew's face. And Andrew brings the ball to square up to the basket, and Lucas pulls the ball off his chest with 2 hands. He square, you flick that thing from underneath, or he dribbles and you flick it from behind, or you cut him off. I've never seen it before. I've never seen it since. He just pulled it off his chest with 1 hand, and with 2 hands right off his chest, and then dribbled down the length of the court on the right side with his left hand, and lay. I mean, he was. And I'm sure if you asked Andrew, the one you of those 3 that you would least want, he'd get his knee in your leg. He would get right in your grill. He would take that charge. He would step in front of you and pop you. I look at Damian Martin now, and the only person that I've seen, and I know I've been away 11, but I watched all the games because I love the NBL. Darren Lucas is the best I've had, and the only person that I've seen that can change a game defensively more than Darren could was Damian Martin. He just that was another thing altogether again. Lucas was great on the guy. You've got this guy just trashing. Damian Martin is all angles, everywhere, all over. Game-winning plays, flicking the ball from behind, pulling the ball away from a guy, getting in the lane, getting a steal. I love that side because I admire guys that have made the most out of what they can control. I look at guys and I go, man, you can control this. It's something that's in you that you can control. And what I learned as a coach, it's not something you can talk about. It's something. It's a skill. And Damian Martin's skill as a leader, Damian Martin's skill defensively, that what he does is a skill that's the best I've ever seen in those NBL circles.
Given you had Darren, and you spent so much time at practice going over the Tigers structure and where you were going to pop Drewy on all of those cuts, he was known as the fat.
Well, hang on. So this is what happens, Gorge. When Liam gets really excited, he kicks out his microphone. So you'll notice, if you join us any time you join us, when he gets excited,
okay,
about defense. Here we go.
Yeah,
I got you back.
I'm getting amped about this. Was it with all that considered? Was it actually Copes that kept you up at night? Was he the X factor? You talk about the worry that the Tigers could always go to another level. That to me seemed like it was when Copes got on a heater.
Copes, again, that underscored. I just guys that gets to some pet peeves too. When you're watching the NBL now and you listen, greatest final ever, greatest team ever, best this ever, and I'm looking at a best guard. Bright number. When they say that, they're in that ilk. But Copeland was, my dad was assistant coach at UNLV. He came into the stadium to recruit Bradkey for UNLV. And he's sitting behind the bench, and it was at the class house. And he could not believe Leonard Copeland and DMAC, and that they weren't in the NBA. And he said, this game's the best. The amazing thing about Australia is this game was one of the best games I've seen. And he goes, it's the best kept secret in Australia. He goes, nobody knows it. It's not that no one's, and that's, again, we could go on, but that's where Larry Kesselman, I don't think the basketball's gotten so much better. Larry's done the job with the league. But I know I'm drifting here, but Copeland just used to really concentrate in those playoffs of not letting him play over the top. So you couldn't, never deny him. Never, ever deny him. Stay between him and the basket and do not let him back cut you. And you have to live with the hand on the jump shot. But when they were the most dangerous is when Andrew got Copes going. So the thing about, and I've heard a podcast that Body Naj did with somebody, and they were talking about Andrew Gaze and what he was the one. He was the ball carrier. He played, D-Mac's position. He played Bryce Cotton's position. He wasn't, people look at him and say, oh, he was a scoring guard. No, he was the one on that team. Mm-hmm. He brought the ball up and everything went through him. And so Andrew had a lot to do with Copes. And that alley-oop pass that you see in all those three, who was throwing him the ball? Andrew was like Larry Bird. Andrew could pass the shit out of the basketball. But it was a nightmare. And Copeland was definitely, Gaze was the I always thought you had a chance to wear Andrew down. And that was what my focus was. Did you let the one guy just go for 70 and close the other ones down? My goal was to make Andrew so tired by the fourth quarter he can't get his hands up, because I always felt like within the framework of the offense, not basketball-wise, Copes can do whatever he wants, but within their framework, he needed Andrew. Right. And if you got to Andrew, you did get to Copes in a way. So the third option and the dribble handoff and you wear him out in the back court and he can't get to that option. You can't get to the two. They're two. Those cuts. You get him tired. It has an effect on Leonard. When Andrew's fresh and Andrew's flying, that opened up Leonard. So Leonard, Andrew did have an effect on Leonard, but it was a two-pronged attack.
Hashtag NBL Rewind. Yes.
Just before we finish up, I just want to ask. I just want to gorge about Parky. Obviously, a big factor in this game that we watched, hitting some clutch free throws down the stretch, has had a really difficult time of things over recent times. But there's been really good news recently that he's doing really well and being really successful in his fight. Gorge, what have been your emotions throughout this period of time with Parky and your contact with him?
It's, I guess, in honesty, it made me think a lot of how over these 11 years, I probably haven't been the greatest guy. I'm horrible with all the modern tech stuff. I kind of get in my hole and go to practice and come back. And I've been 11 years in China and, lost those, when I was here, those constant contact that I was coaching the national team. I was with the club team. So the most I've been in Australia was 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And a lot of times I wouldn't even see these guys or contact for a couple of years. Now, Andrew was, and again, the time that he was with the Magic, when he left, it was not replaceable. Forget the basketball. He's just, if there's a party, if there's something happening and he's there, it's totally different. When he leaves, you might as well get your stuff and go. The party's over. And it was the same at practice. He made it fun. And, his father was my stats guy. We were close. Families were close. My brother Greg's probably his closest friend. So that's a tight deal. So my emotion to this is when I heard, I just a heavy heart and like, man, I haven't done enough. I haven't seen or spoke to him enough. And it really, he's young and he's bigger than life. And when I heard that, it was crushing. All these events going on in the world and what sport has and what sport does for that. You know, the African American and thing with Mike was all brought together. The relationships were were all through sport. And so me in this thing with Parky, thinking back to the teams, that was touching, and we had our moment together, and I'm so happy for him, and I'm so proud and respectful of how he's handled this. But the thing that was even more to me was how Chris Anstey, Shane Bright, Darren Lucas were everything on hold, man. Were by Jason Smith bringing food to his house at night. So you talk about these Magic teams and these Tiger teams, it's that bond that you've created for the rest of your life. And you get that, you know, through sport. And it's been a wonderful report that Andrew got, and everybody's so happy and proud of him. But really proud of all those guys too that have done such a great job of rallying around him. And it's the culture of the Magic. It's the culture of the Tigers, what those teams had and still have with those guys, that makes coaching and being involved in sport something. I guess now I'm at this age and I've come back to the NBL, you don't want to stop.
Hashtag NBL Rewind. If you haven't watched the game yet, 1992 Game 3, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, NBL TV, wherever you watch and get involved in the NBL content on social media, make sure you check it out. NBL TV, of course. The big one, if you want to go back and watch all the games that Liam and I have had the privilege and the honour then to be able to chat to the legends, including this man, Brian Goorjian. Jump on right now. Gorge, we love talking old games, but we are excited about what is going to happen next 3 or 4 months as well as you count down. And we all count down to NBL 21 with you at the helm again in our league. We can't wait, mate. So thank you, firstly, for joining us. And great for all of us to be back in the league to see this Goorjian-led teams do it again.
Thank you so much for having me. I admire what you guys do, and really excited to be back.
NBL Overtime, don't miss it. I will see you on Tuesday, Liam. Hashtag NBL Rewind before you get involved there. See you then.